Everyone knows the Great Pyramid of Giza. Almost nobody knows who actually built it. For centuries, one story took hold. Slaves. Whips. A cruel king forcing thousands of broken bodies to drag stone across the desert. Old Hollywood epics sold us that image, and it stuck. Some people still whisper about aliens. But the real story is stranger than either one. And far more human. Beneath the sand beside the pyramids, archaeologists found something nobody expected. Bakeries. Sleeping quarters, broken bones that had healed, evidence of people who were fed, housed, and cared for. The real mystery was never how the stones moved. It's how tens of thousands of ordinary people learned to move together for 20 years straight without the whole thing falling apart. So who built the Great Pyramid? Stay with me. The answer is going to change how you see civilization itself. Let's start with the myth, because it's older than you think. Around 450 BC, a Greek historian named Herodotus visited Egypt. The pyramid was already 2,000 years old by then. Ancient history, even to him. His guides told him a story. 100,000 men forced into labor, working in 3-month shifts for 20 years. Herodotus wrote it down. For the next 2,500 years, almost nobody questioned it. Then, in 1988, an American archaeologist named Mark Lenner began digging south of the Sphinx. He wasn't hunting for treasure, he was hunting for people, for wherever the actual builders had lived. What he found wasn't a slave camp. It was a town, streets, bakeries, breweries, long mud brick barracks big enough to sleep thousands. 2 years later, in 1990, an American tourist was riding a horse near the Sphinx when the animal stumbled. Its leg had struck a wall, buried just beneath the sand. That wall belonged to a cemetery. Archaeologist Zahi Hawass led the excavation that followed, and what his team found changed everything. These were the tombs of the pyramid builders themselves. Buried close to the sacred pyramids, an honor, not a punishment, marked with Egyptian names. Some skeletons even showed healed fractures, bones that had broken, been properly set, and allowed to mend. Hawass has made the point plainly. Enslaved people would never have been given tombs like these, so close to the pyramids they helped raise. These weren't disposable workers. They were a workforce Egypt went to real trouble to keep alive. Now, picture the actual scale of the job. The Great Pyramid contains an estimated 2.3 million blocks of stone, roughly 6 million tons of material in total. Most of it came from a quarry right there on the plateau. The fine white casing stone was ferried across the Nile from Tura, and deep inside, the king's chamber is lined with granite hauled from Aswan. Some blocks weighing up to 80 tons, carried more than 800 kilometers downriver. No engines, no iron tools, no wheel doing any of the heavy lifting. And it all had to happen in roughly 20 years. Do the math, and you land on something startling. A new block set into place every 2 or 3 minutes, for 2 decades, without stopping. So maybe Herodotus wasn't entirely making things up. Some Egyptologists think his 100,000 wasn't wrong. It just wasn't everyone on site at once. It may have been the total number rotated through in shifts of 20 or 25,000 at a time, year after year. Same total. Completely different picture. Either way, the real question was never how they cut the stone. It's how you keep that pace for 20 straight years without the whole operation collapsing into chaos. The answer starts with organization. Egyptian records describe the workforce split into 2 great divisions. Each division broken into crews of around 200 men. Each crew broken again into teams of 10 or 20, every team with its own job. Some teams even had names. Team names, almost like a sports club today. Inscriptions mention a crew calling themselves the Friends of Khufu. Another gang, apparently in better spirits, went by the Drunkards of Menkaure. This wasn't a faceless mass of labor. It was thousands of small units, each with its own identity, competing, cooperating, and answering to someone above them. Quarry teams cut the stone free from the bedrock. Haulers dragged it on wooden sledges. And surviving Egyptian art shows workers pouring water into the sand just ahead of the sled, cutting the friction enough for roughly 20 men to move a 2-ton block. Exactly how the heaviest stones were lifted so high is still argued about today. Ramps, levers, some kind of internal system nobody has fully proven. That part of the puzzle isn't solved, but how the people were organized. That part isn't a mystery anymore. Small teams, nested inside bigger ones, all reporting upward, The pyramid rose not because of one brilliant trick, but because Egypt had already solved a harder problem than engineering. It had solved people. None of that labor happens on an empty stomach. At the settlement Leonard's team uncovered, they didn't just find sleeping quarters, they found dozens of bakeries using thick ceramic pots to churn out thousands of loaves of bread a day. They found breweries. Beer wasn't a luxury, it was calories, safer to drink than river water, and very likely part of the daily wage. And in the rubbish heaps, something unexpected turned up. Bones from prime cattle, not scraps, real meat in real quantity. Enough for several thousand people to be eating beef, apparently, on a regular basis. That's a better diet than most ordinary Egyptians had access to. For workers building a king's tomb, that's not neglect. That's investment. None of that food grew itself either. Farmers upriver, herders, fishermen, bakers and brewers on site, boat crews hauling grain down the Nile toward Giza. An entire economy funneling into a single construction site. The pyramid wasn't raised by muscle alone. It was raised by everyone standing behind the muscle. We know a surprising amount of this because of a stroke of luck. In 2013, on the shore of the Red Sea, a French archaeologist named Pierre Tallet found the oldest inscribed papyrus ever discovered in Egypt, a logbook kept by a mid-level official named Merer. Merer commanded a crew of roughly 200 men. Their job, sail block after block of fine limestone from the quarries at Tura down to Giza. His journal reads almost like a shipping manifest. Which day they left, how many trips they made, who they answered to, a court overseer named Ankh-Haf, who ran the harbor where the stone came ashore. Merer even records the pyramid's original name, not the Great Pyramid, Akhet Khufu, the horizon of Khufu. This wasn't a lucky improvisation repeated blindly for 20 years. It was a managed operation, tracked in something close to real time. Egypt even had a calendar built around the job. Every year, the Nile flooded the farmland for months. Fields vanished underwater. Farmers, suddenly with nothing to plant or harvest, were called up for state labor instead. A kind of tax, paid not in grain but in months of work. No blueprints on paper have ever been found. No computers, obviously. Just a bureaucracy precise enough to move stone across an entire country and land it exactly where it needed to be on schedule. The pyramid is the part you can see. The system underneath it is the part that actually built it. Here's the twist historians keep circling back to. We usually assume Egypt built the pyramid because Egypt was already a powerful, organized state. But the relationship might run both ways. Egyptologist Barry Kemp has spent decades studying how Egypt's government actually functioned. Tax collection, grain storage, record keeping, a whole class of professional scribes. His work suggests that bureaucracy didn't arrive first, fully formed, ready to build a pyramid. It matured alongside these projects, because of them. Feeding, housing, and tracking tens of thousands of rotating workers for decades is itself an enormous management problem. Solving it, generation after generation, pyramid after pyramid, forced the Egyptian state to keep getting better at governing. So maybe it isn't just that Egypt was powerful, so Egypt built a pyramid. Maybe it's also true the other way around. Building the pyramid is what taught Egypt how to be powerful. Every civilization eventually runs into the same problem. How do you get thousands of strangers who will never meet to work toward one goal? Money solves it for value. A stranger's coin is worth exactly what your neighbor's is. Writing solves it for knowledge. A scribe's record can be trusted by someone who wasn't even there. Religion, in Egypt's case, solved it for loyalty. A god-king every worker had reason to serve, whether he ever laid eyes on him or not. 4,500 years ago, on a plateau outside Memphis, Egypt found its own solution for labor. Stone was never the hard part. Getting thousands of people who had never met to trust a system bigger than any one of them, that was the real engineering problem. So picture the Great Pyramid again. 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite, stacked with a precision engineers still study today. But it isn't just stone. It's a bakery that never stopped producing bread. A boat captain named Merer, filing his reports on time, trip after trip. A work gang laughing at their own name, hauling a stone their grandchildren would still be able to see standing. It's a farmer waiting out the flood season, called up to serve his king, and fed better than he ever ate at home. It's someone with real medical skill, thousands of years before Hippocrates, setting a worker's broken bone, because that worker mattered enough to save. Every single block is a completed agreement. Somebody quarried it, somebody shipped it, somebody fed the person who finally lifted it into place. The greatest feat of the Great Pyramid was never the lifting of stone. It was the organizing of people. The Great Pyramid wasn't simply built by ancient Egypt, it helped build ancient Egypt itself.